Ready to go live? Not yet. Are we ready? Yes, we're ready, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us back here at the post-Independence Day version of the Liberty First Foundation Roundtable. Excuse my rather breathy commentary. It's 197 degrees here in North Carolina, and I'm dead. With us, as always, is co-host of the Liberty First Foundation, Michael Marshall. Michael Vasquez, dragon of the Northern Tier, Southern Tier, Eastern Tier, Western Tier, New York's only true independent journalist. Jan Rains, our alternative lifestyle specialist, and me, Frank Range Report Johnson. I'm suffering from jet lag. Well, if he could use that excuse, so could I. You know, I've been on a plane just about as
well. You can't because he did it 12 days. He was jet lagged from a trip 12 days beforehand, where he had 2 days of rest, and he was taking naps throughout the days he was prepared.
He claims he's working too hard, and now he has to go to bed by 8 o'clock every night.
He's working less than 6 hours a day. And he's only working Monday through Friday. He's part-timing it. He is a part-timer by definition.
And nothing in the world happens post 8 p.m. Washington time.
No, never.
Yeah. And nothing starts happening until 10 a.m. Washington time, Monday through Friday. Hezbollah, Iran, Russia, China, they all take the weekends off to relax, and they don't start working until 10 New York time. Come on.
They take off all government approved holidays.
Of course, Who answers? Dal has a great question there. And it's the question that really we've been asking for years. The media is trying to avoid asking it now. Now that the mask is off and there's no way to hide this from the public, who's answering the phones? Who's running our government? We were told for years, you're just Republican, you're just conservative, you're just haters, you're racist and bigots and blah, 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 and phobes, because Biden is fantastic. We now have the mask off. We know for a fact, it's indisputable, that Biden is not there. He's basically in the same shape as Dianne Feinstein at the last of her days. And now they don't want to ask the question. There's two questions. We know the media knew. Why didn't they tell us? The second thing, who's actually in charge? Who's actually making the decisions 18 hours of the day when Joe Biden's, he's wherever he is.
Incapacitated.
Well, I saw an article today.
Awake, so.
I saw an article today that said that Jill and Hunter are running the country.
Oh, yeah, because I want Hunter. Not only are they unelected, but I want Hunter to be involved in any decision with anything dealing with politics.
Well, did you see when Sleepy the Kid Sniffer comes out and he says at one of the meetings, he was quoted as saying, the White House is no place for a felon, but he's got Hunter sitting in on his staff meetings with him. I'm like, talking about pot and kettle, Well,
and he's already, we know he did violate the regulations on secret documents for 4 decades. And the only reason he's not being, and again, this was the clue that we picked up on, that the major media knew about, and the public was, just told, don't think about it. He was to Robert Hur, his report, Biden is too old and senile to stand trial, but he's running the country. And we said it then. If you can't stand trial because you're too senile, too feeble of mind, then how can you run the country? And as we now see, and everyone now has to admit, yeah, he can't. This is terrifying. We should be terrified that we are in this position now, that the media has failed, the mainstream media has failed so epically. The Democratic Party is so obsessed with power and the Republicans too, for that matter, but more the Democrats. They actually have the most access. They know. Chuck Schumer knew. Hakeem Jeffries, who's the majority leader for the House for the Democrats, he knew. Nancy Pelosi knew. They knew what was happening. And they decided to say, no, you're just an istinophobe. No one's going to listen to you. You don't know what you're talking about. So they lied to our faces. Lied to our faces.
This takes me back to before the 2020 election too, because he was in his basement. So how much was all this cognitive stuff affecting him then? Because he wasn't out on the campaign trail that hardly any for the 2020 election.
Many people said it in 2020. I said it publicly in 2020 that Biden was in the basement because he couldn't actually campaign outside of it. And we have to ask, we go backwards in time. There's so many points in time where we can say, and why wasn't he here? Or why didn't he react to that? The whole problem with Afghanistan, he wasn't around. He didn't know what was going on. He lied to the American people because he didn't know what was going on, because he was doing part-time running the country. And I don't even understand, why has the 25th Amendment not been activated already? I understand the Democrats want to, I don't know what they think they're going to do with the election. They've lost. Everyone understands that. That's why all of their donors are.
Look at the latest polls.
Trump's up. Real Clear Politics has him up 3.9 in a head-to-head. I think he's up
3-3 in the head-to-head.
3-3.
4-9 in the five-way.
Right. And so it's dominating, and there are many polls that show Donald Trump up 6. There's a couple polls that show him up 10. A couple of them show him up 4. There's been about 14 polls that have been done since the debate.
Oh, Montana shows him up 20.
Huh?
Montana shows him up 20.
Yeah, it's done. But yet the Democrats are still trying to say, well, who do we pick to run for the presidency, the 2024 election? Their focus should be, who's going to run the country? Forget about the election. Who's running the country? Let's start there. Because no matter what candidate they put in, it's July. They're going to lose.
Look, I think they're trying to hope for a more graceful exit for the guy.
There is no graceful exit.
No, there is. There's a more graceful exit, and a stroke. That would be. That's him. He may have been suffering from the early onset symptoms of a stroke during the debate, and we had a full-fledged one later on. Maybe it's just a mini stroke, but in clear conscience, he can't dedicate himself to the schedule of the rigorous presidency. Tell me when they don't lie, Mike.
I understand, but
they look
too late. You can't lie. To lie after the fact is even more damaging than the lie.
Yeah, but they're already. Listen, the goose is already cooked. They're just trying to get it out of the pot before it burns. Here's the deal: they'll come up with some sort of medical excuse why the guy's got to bow out at the last moment, so that this way that it doesn't seem like they're ousting him and betraying him, because they've all been speaking so highly of his cognitive abilities for the last 36 months. This way they can get rid of him. He looks like he's doing it for the sake of the country. This is necessary. This is necessary for as much as I'd like to stay on, I can't. And the country's going to be in good hands, and they still have plenty of time. If they 25th Amendment him, they're going to look like they pushed him out. There's going to be a war inside the DNC like the likes we haven't seen.
It's already
happened. I know, but they don't want to put it out in public.
They've already figured it out. The DNC's already figured it out.
Yeah,
they've already came out with it.
Well, you only got 3 people so far that have come out there and say that Doggett and 1 or 2 other people have said, he should really step down. But look at all the talking heads. The talking heads are already circling the wagons. we had 3 of the 20 Democrat governors who showed up at the White House for their little summit came out in front of the cameras. The other 17 were like, no, that's all right. You guys can do that. This is your last run anyway. We have to worry about re-election. Let's not worry about us. They're gonna try and find a graceful exit for the guy, unless they can, they put a little Visine in his coffee in the morning. He's got the score, he's out, whatever. In this way that he can leave with dignity.
I understand that's what they would like to do. That moment has already gone. They passed that by well over a year ago. And when we see that Joe Biden, this is reported by The Guardian, which we have on the screen for people who are listening in. Joe Biden today essentially came out as the first transracial president who also happens to be gender fluid. Now, when I say that, which sounds insane, let me define that. Joe Biden called himself a black woman, that he is the black woman in the White House, that he has somehow imagined himself as a black woman president. This is Joe Biden. No one trapped him in this. These are his words that he made to the world. This is the Guardian. The United Kingdom is reporting about Joe Biden telling you that he's transracial, gender fluid, because he doesn't know what he's talking about.
All right, but who are you to question his gender?
I understand. If the smart thing, and when I say he's transracial, when I say that he's gender fluid, if the progressive left were smart, that would be the argument they would be making. They're not, because he hasn't made that statement. That's the joke. The joke is that, oh no, so he's going for the progressive young vote. That's why he called himself a black woman. No, it's because he doesn't know what he is saying. He can't even read the script. Why in the hell is he there? We don't need to talk about the 2024 election. Democrats lost. Done. We all know that. It's going to be a landslide. Already done. Doesn't matter who they put in. Donors have already pulled and are pulling their money because it is a waste of time and money. They know this already. The betting odds all show this. Every indicator says this is a waste of time to even consider it. The next step is, well, the most important step: protect America, find out who's in charge. 2, make sure that person's elected. 3, then we find out what we're going to do in 2025. What's Trump going to do next? Let's stop playing this game like Joe Biden is anything.
Honestly, their only hope is to try to take the House and the Senate.
Well, that's what they're focusing on.
That's what several of them are regrouping for.
That's what they're trying for. They're not going to, but they won't get it.
And even polling is showing right now that the
Republicans are looking to have the edge on Congress. They have the edge on the Senate. And that's because
the Republicans are up 1.5 points for Congress.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, Biden job approval right now, 57.9% disapprove of him.
72% of America thinks that Joe Biden is currently unfit to be in the office. And the Democrats lied to the American people and say they want to be reelected, and they knew that he was not capable of doing the job, that they have been covering for him.
That's actually what's really hurt the Democrats, is them covering for Biden, 1, and 2, the lawfare against Trump. Honestly, I think if they would have just left well enough alone, Trump may have ran again this year. But he would have I don't think he would have had the support that he has now. But when they started going after him legally and financially and every other which way, try to get him, force him out of the election, that's when enough people said, "Hey, we've had enough." And this is where we actually need to get back into what yesterday truly means. Okay. Too many of us don't realize how significant Independence Day is.
Well,
How
I'd like
significant July 4th, 1776 truly is.
Well, I'd like to say, to start that off, that I don't know about you guys, but I get tired of seeing Happy July 4th everywhere. We aren't celebrating July 4th. We are celebrating our independence.
Well, there's a reason for that, Jan. And there's a reason is they don't want us to understand what independence means. It means in our independence, we the people, independence from government. We declared our independence from the governmental rule of the crown on July 4th, 1776. And actually, that was done on July 2nd, 1776. The actual proclamation or the actual declaration was written on July 3rd and then presented to the states on July 4th. Okay, and that's why the Declaration of Independence is dated July 4th, because that's when it was sent to the states. But our actual independence was declared on July 2nd by the Continental Congress of the time. And that's another part of history that people don't understand. Our independence was actually declared 2 days earlier when the representatives of the several states decided and voted that they were going to withdraw from English rule. Now, getting back to this, okay, when we declared our independence from governmental rule and tyranny, that's what it was. It meant that we were independent. People have been twisting the Independence Day and saying Happy 4th of July, Happy 4th of July. Every nation, every place on this earth has a 4th of July. What's significant about our 4th of July is that is the day that we declared our independence. It meant that we were independent as a people. We're independent citizens that came together to form a government of the people, by the people, and for the people, yet maintain our independence. They don't want us knowing that we are independent. We are independent of the government. Okay, we are sovereign over the government. That's another thing they don't want you to understand or realize. Okay, it doesn't mean that we are sovereign citizens. It means that we, as a people, together, are sovereign. We are the ones that control our government. Here lately, and it's been happening for many generations, it's been twisted around that the government has control over the people. And that's not what was intended for our country. Okay. That's why yesterday is so significant in our history. People do not get it. They do not understand it. They don't want to. Okay. Because they don't want to be bothered with governing themselves.
Well, I don't think it's that people don't want to bother. They don't realize
it's obvious.
No.
Yes, it is.
Hang on. I think it's that people don't recognize that they have input and power. It's like we're saying, we have seen systemically and continuously in the education system for decades now, generations now, people have been weeded off and told Your vote doesn't matter. You can't fight. What do they say? City Hall. You can't fight the government. There, you have to follow their lead. They're the smart people. They're the ones who are educated. And we've seen this continuously, this mindset of you can't, they can. And then we've seen that followed up by look at the laws they're putting out. Look at, as an example, Chuck Schumer. How many times has Chuck Schumer came out and said, I'm going to do this for you? That they have to do this for you. We're seeing more and more of the government micromanaging people's lives. Why do we need to have single payer health care or Obamacare? Because the government knows more than you about your health care, because the government needs to be involved. The government has to do climate change. They have to be involved. Again, in every aspect of our lives. So when I see yesterday all these people, mostly migrants, and they're shooting off the fireworks, they have absolutely no idea what the fireworks represent, which are bombs, which are cannons and bombs and bullets, representing the battle that we were fighting in 1776. They don't realize that we're reenacting war. That's what that's about. That's a reenactment of the war. It's supposed to make us remember people died so that we could sit back and have arguments about the WNBA and whether Caitlin Clark should get her pay raise or not, even though the WNBA is losing money hand over fist. That people are more worried about what's going on with the housewives of wherever the hell that I don't give a damn about. And they're following that and they're obsessed and they can tell you every detail about that and their favorite sport, but they have absolutely no idea who's running for Congress. Not just the person that is elected currently, not just the incumbent, but okay, who's the challenger? Any challenger. They have no idea because they've been taught not to, because they don't think they can make a difference. And that's sad. That's truly very sad. Jen, you think I'm right, wrong?
No, I agree with you. I mean, that's, also one of the reasons why they stopped teaching civics in high school. I mean, when we were in high school, we had to pass a civics class to graduate.
Yeah. We used to have the social studies here in New York State, and you had to know, at least relatively, have gone over the Constitution and what it is to vote and all that. They don't do that anymore. They have no clue.
I remember in junior high, we had to learn the preamble, and you got graded on it by memorization. Yeah. So, and they don't teach that stuff. That it's, Michael says it all the time. There's a reason the Constitution starts with "we the people."
I agree. And I think the biggest problem is that we've gone so far from being involved. We the people only matters when we are involved. And we've been told, don't be involved. That's the biggest problem, I think. You see where I'm going, Mike?
What's that?
You see where I'm going with that? Does that make sense to you?
And I do agree that we have been systemically taught that we the people no longer have any control, any power, that the only thing we have available to us is our vote. And nothing can be further from the truth. That is the way government wants it. And government generally comes down on people that do tend to stand up for their rights and freedoms and tries to assert their authority. And they generally come down like a hammer. Case in point, we got Ruby Ridge, we got Waco, Texas as examples of that. We've also got the Bundy Ranch incident as well. Okay, where people were trying to basically live their lives, observe rights that were preordained by the Creator, okay, by God, that they are born with. And here's government trying to say, no, you can't do that. We didn't give you permission.
Yeah, but most people don't even know most of those events.
No, they don't.
Most people don't know about any of those situations. Maybe people our age or so would remember Waco.
Yeah,
But that's
and
about
the
it.
big joke about that, because that is how it was being spun, is the wackos of Waco.
Yeah, well, they were a cult.
They were practicing their cult or not. They were practicing their religious liberty, and they were.
I agree they had the right to be a cult, because that is First Amendment. That's their right. You want to have a cult, you can have a cult. That's America. And I think that's where most people don't get that. I mean, literally, most people, you ask them, can you have a cult in America? They'll go, no. Of course you can. Of course you can. First Amendment, freedom of religion. You can have a cult. And that's the fundamental problem. People don't understand when we say freedom of speech, what does that mean? You go to most kids today and you ask them about freedom of speech, they think, oh, well, you can only say the approved things, is essentially what they're going to say. Well, you can't say hate speech. Yes, you can. Hate speech is protected. That's First Amendment. Matter of fact, that's the whole point of the First Amendment. It's that whatever you say, someone else will find hateful. Therefore, you have to be protected. I don't care which side you're on. I don't care what it is you're talking about. Someone else, 360 million people, somebody believes whatever it is you're saying is hateful. Therefore, you have to be protected.
And where some of that comes from is the twisted argument of you can't yell fire in a crowded movie theater. Okay. And the thing is, you can yell fire all day long, but you must be responsible for the speech that you make. And if people get hurt and injured because of the speech that you made, then you're culpable for those injuries. It doesn't mean you can't say it. It means you're responsible for what you say. That's individual responsibility. Okay. Yeah. You can say whatever the hell you want to say, whether it's truthful or lie, hateful, whatever. Okay. That is what the First Amendment protects. It does not protect you from the repercussions of what you say.
Right. So in other words, if you're in a movie theater, someone yells fire, people run out, you break your arm. If there was no fire, the person who screamed that is liable for your injuries because they caused it. They committed a crime. They caused harm. If there was a fire,
they actually didn't cause.
Well, their words incited a panic. Again, I'm trying to. It's off the top of my head, so I'm trying to give an example.
They didn't violate law.
I'm not saying they violated the law. They caused the harm.
Rights to, they caused harm. So civilly, they can be sued.
Right, they're liable.
Yes,
they're liable because you got hurt, and they're not protected. Now, if there was a fire in the same scenario, and there was in fact a fire, and you still broke your arm because people panicked and they were running out, the person who called fire is protected in that scenario. Why? Because it was the truth. The difference between the two things, and the same, it's still a person screaming fire in a crowded theater or wherever the place is. The difference is because it was true, you're protected because you told the truth. When you didn't tell the truth, you're not protected. The First Amendment doesn't protect you from lying, the consequences of that lie. That's it. It's simple. It's something that everyone can understand. That example, imperfect as it may be, everyone in the world can understand it. Why don't we teach it to kids anymore? Sixth graders can understand this.
Because they don't want to. Because they want to control you. And the more they lead you to believe that you can't say anything that you want, okay, the more that they can control you, because then they can start telling you what's approved and what's not approved.
Kick in there, Frank. I know you got comments on this.
I'm just listening. We've had this debate numerous times in there, and if we can't get this straight by now, we should stop talking about it. It's
Okay, if that's what Frank has to say, we will stop talking about it.
no,
And move on to the next one.
no, no, the whole look. The free speech debate. We've kicked the crap out of the free speech debate here on the show. But you're right. People listen. The only time anybody seems to give a damn about free speech is when they're either hurt by it or inconvenienced by it. Otherwise, they don't give a shit.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
They don't give a shit. They don't know what it is or how it affects them until they are insulted. You can't say that to me. Or until they're told to shut up. You can't tell me that I can't say that. This is the only time anybody ever cares. And the politicians are just happy to go along with that. They're happy to go along with that. And then they're also happy to just determine to be the arbiter of what you're allowed to say.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they would rather that you don't have the ability to determine what is free speech and what's not, because they want to be able to tell you what to say. And the media is all too happy to tell you what to think about what you have to say.
Mhm.
And we have that Morning Joe clip to prove that one. How are these people, it's our job to tell people what to think. Everybody remember that?
Yep.
Yeah. Like I said, we can have the argument a million times over and over again. We understand it. We understand it. The masses only understand when it's in their face. When it's in their face. I'll give you an example. Social media. Everybody complains to the high hills about how every post they put up gets taken down. They get put in jail. They get this, they get that. I can't believe they went back 4 years and flagged a joke I made. And now I got a 3-day suspension. Well, listen, when you were presented with opportunities to avoid that and to live outside somebody else's rules, you didn't walk away from it.
No, you
didn't
didn't.
take advantage of it. So who is to blame? Who is to blame? The person who put you in the chain, or you who has the key and refuses to use it? If you become complacent in your own captivity, don't blame the jailer. You know, if you then at least be honest. At least be honest about it. The people that don't understand free speech should at least be honest about it. And maybe that's part of the problem that we have today, is that there's not a lot of people in the country right now who will, you know, Marshall, you always say, and you're always right when you say it, we have to do these things at the local level. We have to talk to people at the local level. We have to explain everything and everything else. You know what I think the problem that we have is when we try to explain people at the local level? Pride.
Yeah.
Too many people are too damned prideful to admit that they don't know. They don't know what they are supposed to know. They have forgotten what they have been taught, or they misunderstand what they've been taught, or what they were taught was misrepresented to them. And in any one of those occasions, too many people have too much pride to say, I didn't understand. I don't know. Please help me explain it. You know, please explain it to me so I better understand it. People are too afraid to do so. And in doing so, they'd rather live ignorantly than live intelligently. And that's why it's so easy to control people.
Yeah, I was about to say that's dangerous. That's dangerous. There's nothing wrong.
It is extremely dangerous. I mean, and then you have the Fauci point of view. As soon as you make things uncomfortable for people, or you make people have to pay a price for their stand, then their dignity don't mean shit. Their ideology doesn't mean shit. They understand perfectly well that they can control the narrative by controlling the environment in which you live. And if you don't understand where your rights are, you don't understand where to push back or how or what you're able to. If the American people had even the slightest clue as to what level of power that they actually have over the government and over this world, it would be a much different place. But people don't understand it. Nobody wants to be the first one to raise their hand. Nobody wants to be the first one to cross that line. Nobody wants to do that. But for God's sake, courage is contagious. If you don't understand, ask. Lead a path to knowledge, and other people will follow you. Even if you go by yourself, you're going to come back better educated.
Sure. I agree.
Okay, guys, we got to move on.
Yep.
I'm going to skip around. So why don't we go ahead and go with Michael on going over what SCOTUS rulings he wanted to cover.
Yeah, SCOTUS has been extremely busy this week. If a lot of you haven't been following, just since the 14th of June, there has been a ton of rulings that have came down. Okay, you've got City of Grants versus Johnson was issued June 28th. Snyder v. United States was issued June 26th. United States versus Rahimi was issued on June 21st. Smith v. Arizona, June 21st. Erlinger versus United States, June 21st. Gonzalez versus Trevino, June 20th. Diaz versus United States, June 20th. Schiavone versus City of Napoleon, Ohio, June 20th. Garland versus Cargill, June 14th. Okay, so since the 14th, those are the various rulings that came out from the Supreme Court. Now, I'm only going to touch on a few of these. Okay, some of them we've already touched on a little bit in the past, so I won't spend a lot of time on them. But
Mike, I might suggest, because no one, if you ask most people, you mention the cases, they have no idea what it is.
Well, that's what I'm going to get into a little bit. Okay, and actually, let's do it this way.
By the way, I got fireworks going off every so often, so if you hear background noise, sorry.
Yeah, we got something going on here too.
It's the Bronx, so.
Okay, so, this is from the American Bar Association, and this will give you a list of all the Supreme Court cases that have been decided, and it will link to the actual Supreme Court opinion on the case. So this is a great place to go to. I'll go ahead and put this in the chat so people will have it so that they can actually look these up on their own. Okay. So getting back to this. Okay. So I'm going to start back at the 14th. So Garland versus Cargill. Okay. And basically what that case was over was the bump stock ban. And this we did talk about when it came down. And essentially what it amounts to is, how is a machine gun defined in the current law, or the National Firearms Act of 1934? And that the ATF and the Department of Justice did not have the authority to change how how something is defined in current legislation, that authority remains with Congress. Okay. And basically it says right here, Congress had intended to define machine guns as guns which could fire more than one shot automatically by a single function of the trigger. The definition of machine gun therefore turns upon the question of a single trigger function and not upon the question of rate of fire. The court held that under this definition, semi-automatic rifles with a bump stock cannot be considered machine guns.
Now, while they were talking about the Second Amendment in that case, and I know during the last month, there was also the case with the FTC, which you may be bringing up. There was also the EPA. There was also the most recent case that just, last week came out. We've got about 3 or 4 cases, if I remember correctly, in the last month, where even though it may be in different parts of the government, the answer was agencies cannot make law. Only Congress can.
And that eventually, and we will get into this more, this was what really led to the overturning of Chevron doctrine.
Right.
Okay. And if you look at the cases that have been decided by the courts over the last year or so, when it involved a 3-letter agency or government bureaucracy changing how something was defined, essentially the courts ruled against them every time. Okay, that they did not have that authority. In fact, it's been going on since during the Trump administration. When it really started, that it was essentially that a executive agency cannot change how something is defined. Okay, they couldn't reinterpret the way something was defined.
So they can't create law, essentially. If you are not Congress, you can't make law in the most simple terms.
And that is consistent with Article 1, Section 1 of the Constitution, where it says, all authority for all legislative powers shall reside in a Congress consisting of a House of Representatives and a Senate.
But Mike, don't they say, the news media has said, the politicians have said, some of them, that, oh, well, that's MAGA. That's just being a conservative or Republican. They just don't like those rules. Like, oh, you just want to kill kids because you want bump stocks and that's a machine gun. You want a pistol brace because that's a machine gun. You want the EPA, of course, because they're going to make sure you have clean air. That's the argument that we hear from mainstream media. But if I'm understanding you correctly, the answer is it doesn't matter what party's in charge. It doesn't matter what administration is running. The government isn't, the agencies don't have the power to make a law.
No, they only have the power to enforce laws that are passed by Congress. That's their authority.
That's it. It's just all they're saying is shrink the government and Congress.
They're not even saying shrink the government. They're saying that these agencies, the EPA, the FCC, the FAA, all of them are only allowed to enforce laws that have been passed by Congress. Okay? They can't make up the rules as they go along.
Well, the argument that I seem to be getting into with people about it is, well, Congress is the one who initiated the 3-letter agency, so therefore they have the authority through Congress to make the law. And I'm like, show me in the Constitution where it states that, please.
Show me in the charters of those organizations where it says that.
Well, it doesn't. And the thing is they are still executive agencies. And as executive agencies, they do not have that authority. They have authority to execute law, not to create law. Okay? And there is a very inherent danger when you task an agency that has the ability to execute law and also give them the authority to create law. Because now you have a dichotomy where there is no longer any separation of powers. Okay. And the agency executing law can make up law as they wish in order to go against whoever they want to go against. And that's the whole reason for that. That's why our Congress is tasked with the legislative power. Okay, because those are our direct representatives. Okay, these multi-letter agencies and departments have no accountability to the people. They are appointed. Typically, they're appointed by the current administration. Okay, so they have no accountability to us. And they have very limited accountability to Congress.
Well, worse, they abuse their power. I mean, like
They
many people
do.
may have forgot Lois
We've seen
Lerner with the IRS, when she decided, oh, I don't like the business you created, so the IRS is going to punish you. They're going to audit you. They're going to fine you. They're going to use the power of the government to shut down your business because Lois Lerner, didn't like what you did, which is a power that Congress never gave to the IRS.
No.
That's just pure abuse. Am I understanding it right?
It is. You absolutely are. Okay, the IRS was literally tasked with the enforcement of the United States tax code, which was passed by the United States Congress and signed into law by the president at the time. Okay, the IRS has no authority to change that. They have no authority to do anything other than enforce the law as it is written. Period. That's it. Okay. I don't want to spend a whole much more time on that because we do have a lot more to go over. Okay. Another one on June 20th. Chiaverini versus the city of Napoleon, Ohio. Okay, now this was a case where the court held that when a criminal defendant faces multiple charges, the presence of probable cause for one of the charges does not bar that defendant from later making a Fourth Amendment malicious prosecution claim in regards to the other charges. I.e., basically they said that when somebody is charged with something, a DA can't just keep stacking charges on them without probable cause for those other charges. Okay, that because let's say somebody got pulled over and drugs was found in their car. Or actually, let's say somebody's pulled over for speeding. They found drugs in the car. Okay, because of a warrantless search, and it just continues to escalate beyond that. And the DA starts racking on charge after charge after charge after charge. Well, there must be probable cause for each one of those charges. Otherwise, it's a malicious prosecution. And basically, the court says you're not allowed to do that, that each charge must be able to stand under its own weight and have its own probable cause. You can't use probable cause from one charge to support the filing of charges on another charge.
Well, wouldn't that interfere with the judgment on the ruling that they made regarding not having to have warrants for the glove box?
That was not the Supreme Court that ruled that. That was a lower court that ruled that.
But it's still, to me, it still would overrule that ruling.
Yeah. Okay, and essentially, I believe that's going to going in front of the Supreme Court at some point, as well. Okay, but I don't want to get off on that. Okay, we want to stick with Supreme Court cases, specifically. Even though we did discuss that, probably a week or two ago. But yes, in a sense, that does apply here. Okay. And essentially, that was a 6-3 opinion written by Justice Kagan. Thomas filed a dissent with Alito and Gorsuch. Okay, and essentially that's what the court was saying. Okay, and I actually kind of agree with that you can't use probable cause from one criminal act to build a case under another criminal charge. That case needs to have its own probable cause. Okay, next case, also decided on June 20th, Diaz versus the United States. And the court affirmed that the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, that the court held that expert testimony stating that most people in a group have a certain mental state and cannot be considered an expert opinion about the actual defendant, and that such testimony does not therefore violate federal rule of evidence 704B. Okay, I'm not going to get into a whole lot on that. I don't necessarily agree with that. Okay, because just because a group has a certain mental state does not mean that everybody within that group has the same mental state. Okay, and if we held that, then people like Bundy and Son and Sam and so forth, we'd have to look at them as having the same mental state as the people that they were associated with. And I don't buy that. Okay. Also on June 20th.
That's weird.
What's that?
So in other words, they're saying there's no guilt by association.
In a sense, yes.
All right, that if one person in a group or multiple people in a group have a specific standing or state, that it doesn't mean that everybody in that group shares the same thing, correct?
Right.
All right, let's wait for the challenges to the RICO statute.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's going to come very soon. That's going to come very soon. You're going to say, well, every mob family is a loosely associated group of people. No, we're not all really related. But we are a family. We are an organization. And just because some of us might have committed a certain crime does not mean we are all necessarily guilty of the same crime.
That's an interesting one, because I hadn't thought about that. Yeah, that makes it hard to, or
Well,
a terrorist organization, same thing. Oh, just because this one was a suicide bomber doesn't mean the rest of us are all suicide bombers. Even if they, and that's scary, because think about it. I mean, yeah, you have a terrorist cell. One of them gets caught because he's a suicide bomber. And now, what do you do with the other three in that same terror cell?
Now, let's get into details on this a little bit. Okay, because this is kind of interesting. Okay, in this case, Delilah Diaz, was stopped at a port of entry on the United States-Mexican border. Border Patrol agents searched her car, the car that Diaz was driving, and found more than 54 pounds of methamphetamine hidden in the vehicle. Diaz was charged with importing methamphetamine in violation 21 USC 952 and 960.
So she's a
Charges
drug
that
mule.
required government prove that Diaz knowingly transported the drugs.
Okay, wait a minute. Is this the case where she said she didn't know they tried to get her as a mule and she said she didn't know the drugs were in the car?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
The cartel
And
just gave her the car out of the goodness of their heart. Yeah, okay.
the government called a special agent as an expert witness to testify that drug traffickers generally do not entrust large quantities of drugs to people who were unaware they are transporting them. Diaz objected in a pretrial motion under the federal rule of evidence, which provides that in a criminal case, an expert witness must not state an opinion about whether or not the defendant did or did not have the mental state or condition that constitutes an element of a crime charged or of a defense.
So just because drug cartels usually let people know when they're being a drug mule doesn't mean that in this case she knew she was a drug mule.
Right.
That's her argument.
Right.
I get it. I don't necessarily believe it, but I'm sure it's possible. I don't see why this requires the Supreme Court. I mean, it still boils down to, okay, that's the testimony is that's what, normally drug cartels tell people you're a drug mule and you're driving this car to that location so we can get our drugs and you better show up. And then now it's on the prosecution to say, okay, and that's exactly what happened. The problem's still on the prosecution. I don't see why this needs to be Supreme Court. I don't get it.
Now, the Supreme Court had to weigh in on it because the lower courts said that the expert testimony, even though that was an opinion from an expert and not a generalization based in evidence, was allowable. Okay, and because, well, actually, the Ninth Circuit Court did hold that actually, there's Ninth Circuit Court that originally issued the opinion that basically said that the expert witness could not offer their opinions. They had to offer it in generalizations and based upon evidence. Okay, and that an expert opinion about the actual defendant is not evidence. But they're also saying that it did not violate the federal rule of evidence.
Yeah, it seems like a silly case. It should not have gone to the Supreme Court. It seems pretty straightforward. Okay, there's an opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Proof still lies with the
Right.
prosecutor.
They still have to prove that she knowingly knew that they were in the vehicle.
Yeah, I don't get that one. Okay.
Okay, and if they can't prove that, then and the rest of it doesn't matter. Okay, they failed their litmus test.
That one just makes me think we have too many lawyers and too many laws with too much interpretation.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Gonzalez v. Trevino. Okay, the court remanded the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals. Basically, they overturned the Fifth Circuit's opinion, saying that the Fifth Circuit erred when it required a petitioner to provide specific comparator evidence in support of her retaliatory arrest claim. Okay, in other words, they're saying that the Fifth Circuit was saying that a person was required to prove that an arrest was a retaliatory arrest and not a because they were guilty.
Okay, so we got Joe Schmo, who's a gang member
Right.
who mugged somebody. He got arrested for mugging somebody, and now his lawyer's trying to say, "Oh no, you got to let him go because they arrested him because he's a gang member, not because he did the mugging, but because he's a gang member."
Yeah.
Is that what this is about?
Yes and no. Okay. What they're really talking about is, okay, let's say I go by and I flip off a cop.
Okay.
Okay. And then that cop decides to start following me. And now he sees that I'm going 2 miles over the speed limit.
Okay.
Right. He has the authority to pull me over at that point in time.
Right.
And that could be classified as a retaliatory arrest.
But you broke the law.
Yeah.
Okay.
But the police officer had no right to interfere with your transit.
Didn't stop you from breaking the law.
He
No,
didn't
but-
have any authority
but
to
he
put me
had
under
no-
surveillance.
There was no reason for him to be surveilling you, to be following you in the first place. Other than the fact that he
Okay.
was annoyed that you flipped them off. The courts have already found that you could use obscenities against the police, you could use the middle finger up against police, unless it's not for sexual gratification, you can say or do whatever you want, and it's protected under free speech. Unfortunately, a lot of police officers never got that memo,
Well, they're human
and
beings.
they'll use. I mean, listen. Just go to YouTube and look up auditors. First Amendment auditors, and you see what the number of police officers is out there that do not have the first clue what the First Amendment represents, what the Fourth or Fifth represent, what they mean. Let's not even get into the second, but
No, I get that, but I was just trying to make sure I could take it from the legal concept to something that I understand, that the general public would understand, trying to give an example of it. And you're making a good point. You run around screaming a cab, and now you got a cop following you everywhere you go, looking for you to do something so he can
Right.
jump on it. I
Right.
get that. But there's also another element of, but you did commit a crime. So there's that too. There is that part too.
There is that part. Okay.
well, no, you were suspected of doing something, and going 2 miles over the speed limit is not a crime; it's an infraction.
I understand. Some things are better or worse than others. My initial example was, okay, with drug dealers and gang members committing violent crime, there's obviously different degrees. But I get it. So I understand the argument there. I'm just trying to see both sides of it.
Okay. Now, Erlanger versus the United States. Okay. The court vacated or remanded a Seventh Court of Appeals opinion, where the court held that in order to prevent Fifth and Sixth Amendment violations when imposing an enhanced sentence under the Armed Criminal Act, certain requirements must be met. These requirements include a unanimous jury verdict and proof beyond a reasonable doubt that the defendant's prior offenses were committed on separate occasions. Okay. And basically, this involves the three strikes law. Okay. And what happened, I think, in this particular case, this defendant had multiple felony charges for a single incident. It's kind of like Trump's deal with the hush money.
34 charges,
For
all
counts.
from the same thing.
For one incident.
Mhm.
Okay. And that satisfied the enhanced sentencing requirements because they had these multiple felonies on one incident. And then he committed another incident later on. And that allowed them to go after the enhanced sentencing under career criminal status.
Stacking the deck, in other words.
And
Stack the
yes.
deck in one, all at once. Stack the deck so we can throw you away. Throw the key away.
Yep. And that's what it amounted to.
And that's an easy one to abuse. That's an easy.
Mm-hmm. And that's why the court ruled the way it did and said, no, you do have to prove that this happened on multiple incidences, and it can't all be racked up with one or two deals. It has to be separate occurrences.
I can see that, because you can see how they would abuse that. I mean, hell, Trump is a great example of it in a non-lethal, non-violent way, but
Right.
you can see abuse, easy to abuse.
Right. Well, I mean, you can get on a separate incident. Okay. A guy, because they're desperate. Okay. Their family's starving at home. He has no way out. Okay. It doesn't mean that he should do this, but here's how it could play out. Guy's never been in trouble with the law before in the past. He's tried getting state assistance, whatever, tried to feed his family. He has no other recourse that he can find or that he can figure out because he's been denied everything. So he goes in and he commits armed robbery. Well, then the state comes after him. Not only did he armed robbery, he also assault and battery. Okay. He illegally had a firearm in the commission of a felony, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. They can stack up all the charges.
Coercion, all that.
Okay. For a single incident, they stacked up all these charges. Now, because he has this rap sheet that has all these hundreds of charges or whatever number they stacked on it for that single incident, now he's considered a career criminal and is subject to that enhanced criminality.
The difference here with that is, for people who are thinking about it, when you remember that guy, Dwayne, I think his name was Dwayne Davis or something like that. The guy in the Thanksgiving Day parade drove his car through the crowd, and he had 70 counts.
Right.
But that wasn't, he hit one person 70 times, or they're counting it 70 different ways. He hit 70 different people, and some of them died. Most of them died. Some of them were just injured, but there were 70 charges because, and actually it was like 140, because it was attacking the person and then injuring the person with a vehicle with intent. So he's getting like 2 charges per person, but there were 70 people. So they weren't stacking it because of the event. It was the event was those multiple things they did. He had multiple people he hit. So that's the difference, in case people were trying to figure it out.
But also, in that case, that single incident, even though there are 70 charges, 70 separate charges, that are legitimate charges. And even in both cases, those are legitimate charges. It doesn't mean that qualifies them for enhanced sentencing under the Career Criminal Act, because that was the only time he's ever done any criminal act. He's not a career criminal. Okay, regardless of how horrendous the event was.
Yeah, that was, by the way, that was Wakusha. It was Wakusha Darrell Edward Brooks Jr., just so I got it right. And that was Wakusha, Minnesota. So, wasn't Dwayne, it was Darrell Brooks Jr.
Okay, next case, decided on June 21st, United States versus Rahimi. Okay, the court reversed and remanded a Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals. The court held that when an individual has been found by the court to pose a threat to the physical safety of others, temporarily disarming that individual does not violate the Second Amendment. Okay, and we touched on this a little bit when it came out. The court held that when a person is considered to be a threat and pose a threat to other individuals, that they can actually temporarily take away their right to own firearms. This is a dangerous precedent.
Yes.
Because this sets precedent to allow for red flag laws, in my opinion.
Which I disagree with massively.
Okay. Now, my opinion has always been, if a person is considered to be unsafe to own firearms, then they are considered to be unsafe to be in society. That's been my opinion all the way along. Okay, I don't agree with this temporary deal of saying people can't own firearms when they aren't being also institutionalized for an actual.
Well, that's why we have a process for someone who needs to be institutionalized. We have a process for people who commit a crime. What this case for Amy, what it's arguing about is there is no crime. There is just punishment because someone said so. That's authoritarian.
This person, and this is what really gets me, is this person has no due process. Okay, because they can't argue against this domestic what the hell is it called?
Abuse?
No. Restraining order.
Oh, restraining order, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And I don't agree with that. Okay. And it violates the Fourth Amendment. Okay.
Eighth Amendment.
Did you say Eighth Amendment?
Yeah.
Unusual violates Fourth Amendment due process.
Well, it's both. It's not one or the other. It's both. Mm-hmm. It's if it's you have no due process, and it's unreasonable punishment for a non-crime by the fact it's not a crime and you're being punished. That's unreasonable.
Right. Okay, so
when people think of it that way, I bet most people would agree with me. If you thought of it that way and said, "Oh, you didn't commit a crime, but you're punished," you'd say that's not right.
Yeah.
If you just left out the word guns, people would agree overwhelmingly, I think.
And I don't agree with this opinion. And even though it's an 8-1.
Yeah, it was a majority decision.
Okay. I don't agree with it. Okay. The only one that dissented was Thomas. Okay. Snyder v. United States. In this case, reversed and remanded Seventh Court of Appeals decision. And the Supreme Court held that 18 U.S.C. 666 A1B does not criminalize payments in recognition of actions a local or state official has already taken or committed to take. The court also clarified that an agreement or promise to pay a reward to a local or state official for taking an action does not violate the statute as long as the agreement or promise was only made after the action was taken. And again, this is another one that I don't agree with. Okay, because this opens up a whole realm of corruption. Okay, I don't think that any elected official or appointed official in government office should be receiving anything. any type of reward, regardless of how well they do or don't do. Okay, moving
Right.
on. Fisher versus United States. Okay. This was to prove violation of 18 USC 1512, provision of the Sarbanes-Oxley Act. The government must establish that the defendant impaired the ability or integrity for use in an official proceeding of records, documents, objects, or other things used in an official proceeding or attempted to do so. Okay, we're not going to spend a lot of time on this, but basically it says that the government has to literally show that the defendant intentionally did something to documents to make it so that the proceeding, so that those documents could no longer be used.
You mean like Hillary Clinton bleaching her,
Yes.
or in other words, destroying
Yes.
her disk drives so that no one could see her emails
Mm-hmm.
that were under subpoena.
Right.
Which she should have
Okay.
been charged for.
And basically that's just the court saying that, yes, the government must prove that the defendant impaired the availability or integrity of those records, documents, or objects. City of Grants versus Johnson. Okay. Enforcement of general applicable laws regulating camping on public property does not constitute cruel and unusual punishment prohibited by the Eighth Amendment. And again, I don't know that we're going to get into that a whole lot. But basically what this looks like is that they were trying to use an Eighth Amendment argument against laws that were regulating camping and public property use. Okay, and then Trump v. United States. Now, this one is a very tricky one. Okay. The nature of presidential power entitles a former president to absolute immunity from criminal prosecution for the actions within his conclusive and preclusive constitutional authority. He is also entitled to at least presumptive immunity from prosecution for all of his official acts, and there is no immunity for unofficial acts. Okay, this one I want to get into a little bit, and we'll probably pick up more on this next week as well.
Well, let me ask one question before you get further. Is this about Trump or is this about presidency? Because I hear from the news, this is about Trump. They're helping. This is about Trump. I thought this was about the presidency. Any president have immunity, partial or full? Am I misunderstanding that?
No, you're not. Okay, and it is about any president. Okay, they're trying to make it all about Trump because they're trying to make this court look like it is a advocacy for Trump.
Well, it's going to be the same. Consider it the same thing like DC versus Heller. Heller won the decision, but it applies to all of us.
Right.
Trump wins this decision, but it applies to every president. You know, it's just he's just the moniker on the caseload. That's it.
Well, and basically, from my understanding, this was an assumed, underwritten understanding that everybody already knew that presidents had this immunity.
Right. Everyone thought that. Now it's been confirmed.
Well, isn't it also, can't a president also pardon him or herself?
No, not himself. Everyone else, not themselves.
You got to check that.
No one's ever tried, but as I've understood it, and Mike, you can confirm this for me. Tell me I'm wrong, because I could be. But as I've understood it from the conversations I've had with various lawyers, and it's no one's completely sure, but it applies to it's a pardoning power to others, not to self. It's kind of like it's hard to explain because it's never really happened. There's no real example of it, but because it's the power.
Well, there actually is an example of it. It's Nixon.
What?
Nixon was tried. Okay.
Well, yeah, Nixon couldn't.
Carter gave him, or no, Ford.
Yeah.
Pardon. Yeah.
Right, but Nixon didn't pardon himself.
Right.
Ford did it, which would, I guess, be the precedent that you don't pardon yourself, someone can pardon you. That's the way I've understood it.
Let's actually look in the Constitution.
Well, Nixon was never tried.
No, but he was pending charges.
He was right. The pardon was preemptive.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right. But Nixon, people have got to get Nixon was impeached. Nixon was never impeached. He was never charged.
No.
He stepped down voluntarily.
Yes. Before anything happened.
Right. So before people, get off on the tangent, no. And the pardon, I don't even, from what I remember, I don't think Nixon even wanted the pardon.
He didn't ask for it. Well,
no.
Publicly, as far as everyone knew.
Because Nixon said, listen, I'm stepping down because I don't want to deal with this shit. The pardon to him seemed like an acquiescence of guilt. Well, I would have to be guilty to get a pardon, but I was never tried in the first place and found guilty. So why are you giving me a pardon for something that I was never found guilty of? And even though it was a presumptive preemptive pardon, Nixon didn't want it, and no, Nixon was never tried. He was never impeached.
Right.
Now,
but because he was a Republican, he was hell's spawn.
Of course, always.
And the Constitution does not explicitly say that a president cannot pardon
himself. It doesn't. Okay, and that's what I was actually getting ready to say.
Yeah, it's mixed emotions amongst constitutional scholars as to whether or not it's legitimate. And some say it is, some say it isn't, but unless and until it's actually tried.
If I remember right, when Trump was president the first time, and they tried, everything with the Russia, and the other stuff that they were trying to get him for. I remember Democrats coming out and specifically saying, well, he's going to pardon himself.
Well, you couldn't. Yeah, I remember that too. But I don't think if a president did have the ability to pardon himself, it would not be from impeachment. No. If a president were to be charged for a crime, by the attorney general, all right, say the attorney general decided that he was going to slap Obama with a murder suit for bombing American citizens overseas without due process.
Which did happen.
Which did happen. Right. We do know that it happened. And say, listen, you violated the Constitution. You didn't offer these Americans due process. You essentially murdered them. And I have to bring you again on charges for that. He could have argued at the time, I was acting in my
official capacity.
In my official capacity as president and defender of the United States, that this was a necessary hit. It had to be done. And they said, well, we're going to bring charges against you. And he would say, well, I'm going to just pardon myself. It would be different because it would be within the executive branch. If it was Congress, he wouldn't be able to pardon himself because that's the legislative branch. It's a separate body that he doesn't have authority over.
Well, actually, here's what it comes down to. Okay. In that case, what would have to be done is Obama was quote unquote acting in his official capacity as commander in chief, and acting in his official capacity as commander in chief, he ordered those strikes. Okay. If they wanted to charge him for that, the first step would be to bring up articles of impeachment against him. Okay, because while he's in office, he does enjoy a level of immunity against prosecution. And then once he is impeached and removed from office, then they go after him for the additional charges. Now, what some are trying to say is that this essentially says that no matter how corrupt that act may be, if it can be considered as a part of the presidential powers, and that the president was acting in their capacity as president, officially, that then they have full immunity, regardless of what it was. Okay. And an example was, let's say, there's a candidate that is running for office that is an extreme threat to the nation, and that they've literally said that, and their whole campaign is that they're running on establishing a communist state, let's say, or a fascist state. And they've literally came out and said that I'm going to set up fascism and we are going to blah, 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 blah. And essentially that they're the next Hitler. And they are actually running for office. Would the president, in his official capacity, have the authority to have that person executed?
No, of course not.
And by this ruling, technically he would, because he is acting in his capacity as commander-in-chief of the military and under the authority of the Constitution for the common defense of the nation. Then that would give him the authority.
I would argue that one because gotta have a crime. Gotta have a crime. It's kind of like Obama saying that, and I bring it back to Obama because, again, real world, no hypothetical here. Under the Obama's second term, he was committing drone strikes in Yemen against American citizens without any who were not charged, who had not been convicted of a crime. In fact, he had the DOJ draft a memo that was made public, saying, giving the reasoning that, well, because of his executive authority to protect the nation, he's going to preemptively kill these terrorists, these Americans who he deemed terrorists, on foreign soil. Because they were on foreign soil, that justified him killing them without due process. I disagree with that. I have never agreed with that. And I think it's an overreach. I think it's an abuse of power.
No, I think it is a violation of those individuals' rights.
Yes.
Absolutely. Okay, because no matter who they are, they still have the right to due process, regardless of where they are in the world.
Because they're Americans. Americans have that right.
Exactly.
Okay, guys, we are like 15 minutes over time.
Okay, yeah, there's a lot to Supreme
Yeah,
Court.
well,
We barely touched on them.
Yeah, well, we'll add it to next week because you said there were others that you wanted to go over, and we can even pick up, to start with a little bit on this subject again, because I think that this specific ruling, people really need to understand. It's not about Trump.
Now, I think we're going to probably next 2 weeks. I want to go over this Trump ruling probably next week. I want to go over the Chevron ruling probably the week after.
Okay.
Because those are going to be in-depth discussions on both of those.
Well,
okay, because there are some things that I don't agree with both, and there's things that I do agree with.
Okay. I had 20 minutes for this subject, but I'm going to cut us down to 15.
Okay.
It's something we've talked about several times, red flag laws, but this one is on a federal level, HR 3018.
Right.
Dahl wanted to bring it up. So, Dahl, if you want to throw in there.
Well, I had looked into it a bunch as well. And I know Dal in the audience had requested that we talk a little bit about this.
And actually, Dahl, if you want to come, I'll get you the link.
Right. And Dal's been on with us before.
Yep.
Now, I've covered a lot about red flag laws, and I'm happy to share time with Dal if he wants to. But
yeah, Dal, if you want to come in and join, you can take my seat. My dogs seem to be going bananas downstairs. I've been listening to them for the last 20 minutes. I don't know why they're freaking out, but something's going on. I should really go check on them.
That guy is screaming for no reason. All right. But to get to understand what 3018 is, which came out in June. At the end of June, this was put in place.
Something just happened with our YouTube feed.
Why? Think so?
Yeah. It says we're having trouble streaming to YouTube. This may be an issue on YouTube's end. We'll keep trying to let you know if it's resolved. Please check your YouTube to ensure the stream looks okay. If this continues for a while, try recreating a new live stream or just remove this destination from the stream and then re-add it.
Yeah, in other words,
you're still live on my feed.
We're still live.
Now it says live now.
Yeah, it's YouTube's probably buffering. They're probably buffering us because I mentioned red flag law, and they don't like that.
Yeah.
So let me explain what a red flag law is so people can understand why there's a problem. And this is a bill, like I said, it was introduced in April, as you can see on the screen. That was introduced in April by Mrs. McBath. It's actually Representative Lucy McBath, a Democrat out of Georgia. And this is supported completely and universally by only Democrats. 157 Democrats are all behind us, not one Republican. There's a reason for that. So let me explain as simply as I can what red flag laws are. It is created in 1999 in the state of Connecticut as a reaction to Sandy Hook. This was, the idea was to cut down, first and foremost, the primary purpose, to stop people from committing suicide with a firearm. The secondary thought behind a red flag law is to stop mass shootings.
Let me interrupt you for just a second, Mike.
Yeah.
Can you send Dahl a link?
Me?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you have his contact stuff. I don't.
Okay. Give me a second. Yeah.
Well, I think while you're doing that, I think one of the important things that we have to remember about them trying to make this a federal law is how much the Fed tried to intervene with states and pay states to make red flag laws within their states.
Okay, so no, I understand what you're saying, and yeah, Dal just sent that out to you. So, well, that comes in a second. So, 1999, Connecticut came up with the idea and said, "Hey, here's this great idea. We're going to stop suicides. We're going to stop mass shootings by preemptively taking away people's Second Amendment rights." That's it. They take away your rights under the idea that they're going to protect you and or the community, that you're too dangerous to have your rights, so they will take them away temporarily, quote unquote, temporarily. There have been thousands upon thousands of cases, literally over 7,000 cases in Connecticut alone since the law was put in place in 1999. It has had zero impact on the number of shootings, mass shootings, and suicides in Connecticut. Out of 4 studies that have been done on red flag laws, even though they happen to be in 18 states and Washington, D.C. now, each state has a red flag law. Not one state, only one study says maybe red flag laws maybe have an impact on suicide. Doesn't affect mass shootings, doesn't affect shootings in general. And only one study says maybe it kind of slows down suicide a little bit. Now, they've been trying to make this a national because it sounds good. It makes people feel safe. When you say, I'll take away their gun and you'll be safe, doesn't work, because if people want to commit suicide, every single study, that's from Duke University, from University of Indiana, evidence from Connecticut, Indiana, New York. I've talked to many of these states. People just, if they were going to commit suicide, they just find another way to commit suicide. If they were going to do a mass shooting, they just find another way to get a gun and do a mass shooting. It doesn't stop anyone. But yet, it's gotten a lot of steam because it feels good. It sounds good that you're going to protect people. So state after state has made it. None of the states have reduced their mass shootings, gun control, gun violence, or suicides.
Now,
Here it comes. Now they're going to make it national. Go ahead. Ask the question.
I want to actually note who is allowed to make these claims.
Well, that's what I was about to get to.
Okay. In general, okay, a family member or household member of the applicable individual or a law enforcement officer may submit to an appropriate district court of the United States a petition requesting the court issue an ex parte federal extreme risk protection order or a long-term federal extreme risk protection order with respect to an individual.
Okay. So let me clarify. Red flag laws, this is standard. This, what we're seeing in this national bill, is standard in every red flag law that has ever been made. In that there's certain things that are always consistent. There is a small group of people, usually including family, police officers, sometimes including various members of the state, like teachers or other agents of the state, that if they see you, they think you're dangerous because if you put out a tweet on Facebook, you reposted a meme on Facebook or Twitter, they will consider you dangerous and they can have a red flag placed against you. In almost every single state, the definition of the justification of that is you did something that seemed threatening. What is a threat? Depends on the state. It's not clear. If someone felt threatened, then that is justification for a red flag law. This is consistent in every state. This is consistent on this federal bill. And the result of that is automatically in every single state, a judge will hand out a warrant. Police will show up, or law enforcement will show up at the person's door, normally somewhere between 4 and 8 a.m. in the morning. That's when the person is notified that any of this has happened. The law enforcement will come in. They will take all the firearms in the household. They will take the children, because Child Protective Services has to be notified. If the home is too dangerous for you to have a gun, it's too dangerous for the kids to be there in every single state. CPS takes your kids. Law enforcement takes your guns. You're ostracized in the newspapers and in the community. You spend the next year trying to get back your kids and your guns. Costs over $27,000. No guarantee you will ever get either of them back, and you've never committed a crime. And
Now,
it doesn't stop mass shootings or suicides. Go ahead.
Here's how they define family or household.
Dating. That's the key term.
Okay. Parent, spouse, sibling, or child related by blood, marriage, or adoption to the respondent. Dating partner of the respondent.
You're in
An
now.
individual who has a child in common with the respondent, regardless of whether the individual has been married to the respondent or lived together with the respondent at any time. An individual who resides with or has resided with the resident during the past year.
Yeah.
A domestic partner of the respondent.
Yeah.
An individual who has a legal parent-child relationship with the respondent, including a step-parent, stepchild, and a grandparent-grandchild relationship, and an individual who is acting or has acted as the legal guardian of the respondent. Now, legal guardian of the respondent, and a lot of states have been changing this definition as well, can include the school. Because they are saying that while the child is in the school, in care of the school, that the school is the legal guardian of the child.
Okay, so let me clarify. Yes, legal guardian in almost every state is always the school, which is agents of the state. Any agent of the state can be considered a legal guardian, depending on where that child may be. But the thing that's really odd that stands out in this bill, HR 3018, is you don't see this in almost, there's only 2 states that actually say this. Dating. You can date someone for a day. They can come over. You went out to the bar. You're dating this person for a week. They were in your house twice. They got pissed off because you went and dated someone else in the same time, or they don't like you for whatever reason, and they can now place a red flag law against you. Your ex-wife can place a red flag law against you. The teacher of the temporary badminton coach who's teaching your kids at school can put a red flag against you. It can be for something as simple as, I didn't like that tweet, that post, that meme that they saw online. It is, and it does happen. And I know this because I've talked to the AGs in multiple states. They do this, and they will go in front of a judge. Keywords, dating. This is in national. Most states won't go there because it's so prone to abuse. But in the national one, they say, if you're dating someone was at your house for a week, they're pissed at you, they can have a red flag against you. This is how stupid this law is, which is why we're seeing no Republicans support this. Most Democrats aren't. It is prone to abuse.
Well, now, think about, and I think one of the things that people aren't thinking about when it comes to them saying, oh, I'm for red flag laws, is the fact that people have been killed by the police because they're coming into your home at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning and you don't know who it is. And so you're picking up your gun thinking it's an intruder and shooting at the police, which then gives the police the right to shoot back at you.
2018, a man died that way. That actually happened in Maryland. Mm-hmm. It's one of the cases.
And we talked about it on the show.
Exactly. Yeah. But I wanted to bring it up again, like I said, because, again, I don't think people are looking at that fact.
They're not looking at any of it. The information in talking about this, and by the way, Dal, I know you're there. You can talk anytime. Cut me off if you think I'm missing something essential, but most people don't know anything about red flag laws. All they know is the title, which is sometimes called Emergency Risk Protection Orders, or ERPOs. What they hear is, this will make you safe. We're going to stop someone from committing gun violence. That's what they hear. That's what the mainstream news media pushes out. That's the 30-second message on this. You're going to be safe. It is a lie. The data says, no, you won't. It has never worked, but there is a huge list of people. There are well over 2,000 people, about 2,500 people in New York State alone. There's over 12,000 people in Connecticut alone. We can go through each and every state. There are thousands of people per state that are getting paid a bonus from the federal government, and HR 3018 would increase that bonus that the states get for putting you on a list to take away your rights. So they're incentivized to take away your rights, again, No crime has ever been committed. This is
And
a
there's
violation.
no
Go ahead.
mechanism in this order anywhere that doesn't stop abuse of this. It
Well,
doesn't stop.
that's not correct. That's not correct. In this bill, it's at the bottom of it. There is a provision for there is a penalty. Now, the problem with the penalty, there is a problem with the penalty. Let me put that in there. So I should be able to bring that up. Nope, not that one. Hang on. I want to try and no. There it is. There is a penalty for false reporting or frivolous petitions. Now, this is something that's unique. There's only one other state that actually has a stipulation that says, hey, you have a false, basically the person you were dating for a week, your ex-wife, the kid, the teacher at your school who doesn't like that you're a Republican or a conservative or whatever it is you may be. There is that in one state, and in this provision, they say, oh, well, there's the problem. Except here's the thing. You have to prove they did it not only on purpose, but they knew that you wouldn't be a danger to the public or themselves. It is nearly impossible to prove that. Because all I have to say is, I was threatened by that tweet. I was threatened by that Facebook post or the reposting of that YouTube comment. That's all they have to say is, I thought that was dangerous. And the fine, which in this case is $5,000, disappears. There is no penalty. The penalty is just there to make it seem like there is a fairness to this, that they have considered how to be nice and to make sure no one's going to abuse it. It is a lie, because all I have to say is, but I thought they were dangerous. That's it. I thought they were dangerous. Therefore, you can't charge me with being a penalty. You can't prove it. So there is no way to stop abuse. And we have seen rampant abuse where parents, exes and people who are dating have gone and gotten people to lose their kids for years in every single state, all 18 states and DC. By the way, Dow, are you with us? You're like, I can't hear you, Dow. Audio. Well, while Dow's doing that, again, I have been following this since 2018 in every state. This is filled with all of the mistakes, all of the errors, all of the false promises that we see in every single state. This is why red flag laws have not passed in Congress to date. I didn't like it when Marco Rubio, a Republican, put out his idea that Donald Trump said he was thinking about. I didn't like it when Donald Trump said he supported it. I said that was the wrong idea. I said Marco Rubio was wrong. I will tell you that this is wrong as well. And this is even worse than some Marco Rubio's idea. This is horrendous.
Mm-hmm.
I know Dow's just having fun trying to figure out what his microphone can and cannot do.
It's actually nice to see Dal's face.
I've seen it. I've seen it up close. I don't know, but but here's the thing: when people hear about red flag laws, they don't understand it. First, the biggest thing is there's no crime. The second biggest thing is there is no one to protect you. You don't know when this is happening. This is all happening behind courtrooms' doors. No one ever tells you. Not until they show up at your door with a warrant. When they have a lineup of police officers standing outside your front door with a battering ram and the SWAT team. You do not know. That's the first time anyone is notified that there's a red flag execution on order against you. And that's terrifying.
Now,
I can hear something.
can you hear me now?
Yeah, now
Yeah,
we got you.
gotcha.
There's your voice.
Okay.
You're in. Have I missed anything? Am I wrong about anything so far, Dal?
No, you're right. The one thing I was going to say is it's not so dissimilar from swatting, is
Yes.
the other way that this is used, and the it's a subversion of the presumption of innocence. So instead of presuming you innocent, you are presumed guilty, and then that penalty is your proof of innocence. It's the Nancy Pelosi method of justice.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the problem. And people don't, because the news media will only cover, oh, yeah, police showed up at 5, 6, 7 in the morning at Joe Blow's house with a SWAT team because of a red flag law, and they stop their coverage at that point. They don't talk about anything else. Meanwhile, and this happened to a gentleman in Utica, he committed suicide because his business, he got into an argument with one of his employees. His employee was recording, not to his knowledge. It was very aggressive, very aggressive conversation. They didn't like each other, the employer and the employee. They did not like each other. The employer was firing her. She was being very aggressive in that firing moment. They had words to each other. Various vulgarities flew back and forth. And she took what he said to be a death threat. Now, most people would just consider it, people are yelling, screaming at each other in an argument. They let it go. She walked out the door. No one bothered her. He didn't think about her. No one knew. She went immediately to the court, asked for a red flag law against a red flag action against this man, business owner in the community for his entire life, born and raised in Utica, well-known member of the community, never had a problem, didn't even have parking tickets. The police come over, they shut down his business. They shut down his business, take his firearm. The newspapers run with the story because it happened at 7 a.m. in the morning. No one's coming. His business is shut down for a day. He opens it up the next day, and he's got people picketing outside his door saying that he's an evil, blah, blah, blah. He's racist, blah, blah, blah. He's a danger to the community. He can't go to see his kids. He can't go to the school to pick them up. He can't go anywhere where other kids are because all the parents are, you're dangerous. You're going to, be around my kids. His business is falling apart because no one wants to come in and support him. Because of the accusation. Again, no crime has been committed here. None. He wasn't even told any of this was about to happen to him. He never got a chance to defend himself in a courtroom. They just did this to him. He wound up committing suicide.
Mm-hmm.
It only took a week and a half after the red flag because they destroyed his life for something that was recorded in an argument that if you and I said it to each other, no one would even blink an eye. No one would care. That's red flag laws.
Yeah. They essentially canceled him. And and we see a digital version of that every other week in social media.
Yeah.
And you're going to have to figure with, thankfully, didn't New York State strike down parts of the red flag law or get rid of it entirely?
No.
The Supreme Court?
No. That's the New York Safe Act. They took out parts of the New York Safe Act. Red flag law is perfectly fine. Which is a shame. Because it's over 2,500 people in New York State have been given a red flag action. In the meantime,
and we have literally gone through red flag laws and showed how it violates every one of the Bill of Rights, with the exception of the Third Amendment, and violates the 14th Amendment
and the 15th.
And 15th. Yeah.
There's more. This thing, it violates virtually all of the critical civil rights. The things that the ACLU used to sue for, it violates.
Mhm.
Whether you're a woman, whether you're a person of color, religion, there's so many ways this violates people's rights and is unfair, and it is prone to abuse. It is difficult to get an exact number about the red flag laws because we only find out, and many of the documents are sealed because children are involved. So no
Right.
state will tell you how many children were taken away from their parents because they
Right.
don't want to count that, and they haven't. But it happens. Every AG, every state will tell you it does happen. They can't tell you the number because they have to protect the children, which is
And
just
on a,
stupid.
and on a state level, you can't even if there was a false accusation made and your children were removed, on a state level, there is no recourse
No, the kids are
to
still gone.
yeah, they're gone.
Yeah, it doesn't matter if it's false.
Right. And so you can't even go after this bureaucracy that has taken your children and this other part of the bureaucracy that has taken your property, and you're not likely to get any of it back.
No,
You have no recourse. It's just a complete and utter cancellation and punishment of you from society.
over 80% of all red flag laws in all 18 states, including and also Washington, D.C., 80% go unchallenged because the person normally, over 60% of the cases, the person can't afford the attorney and they can't get a government supplied lawyer in time. So because they
Yeah.
do not have the time to go to court to get a court appointed attorney and to fight this, because of the cost, which is prohibitive, they wind up just letting the government do it. That is also in the studies that came from the study from state of Indiana when they looked into this. That no, it's completely abusive depending on your income. So it's more punishing towards those with poverty than those who have a middle class or upper income and can afford an attorney to actually fight this. It will cost you at least $27,000 to get back your kids. I've talked to attorneys across the country on this. That was the number from 2019, so it's more expensive today than it was then. So you're looking at least $27,000. And as for your gun, in almost every single state, except two, you don't ever get your gun back. You'll get the equivalent value that the state decides you should have for your gun. So if you have a World War II classic 1911, which is a 45 handgun for most people, and you have a classic, someone actually used it in World War II to kill, I don't know, Goering, one of the big Nazis, and it was documented in photos and everything. It was owned by Patton himself. Yeah, they'll give you what they think the market value is for that, which would be $300-400 for a similar, a modern day 45, not the classic value, not the historical value. They'll give you the market value, and they'll melt or otherwise disappear your firearm. There's so many levels of abuse that are built into this. And at the end of the day, the ultimate thing is it doesn't work. That's the most important thing. We're going through all the different ways, and this is true of this national bill. It doesn't work. At the end of the day, after you look at everything, it doesn't work. So why
It's
are
bad
we
law.
doing this? It is an absolutely horrendous law that only survives because people are afraid and they don't know the details. Every time, and polls have been done on this, every time people are told what this thing does, they go, this is a horrible law. No, I don't support it. But you just tell them red flag law, everyone goes, yeah, I support that. It's going to make us safe. Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's because you don't know what it is. It is horrendous. This is evil.
Okay,
It is
guys.
literally evil. Go ahead.
I let us go over quite a bit on this one because we were waiting for Dal and
Sorry.
issues. That's okay, no
No worries.
problem. I'm going to put it on for next week because we are skipping it tonight. But boss, why don't you give us 5 minutes, and I'm going to hold you to the 5 minutes on the Eldon rule and why you want to cover it.
On the which one?
The Eldon rule.
Eldon?
Yeah, that's what you had. Or the
Eldon?
Elden Ring.
Elden Ring.
Yeah, you had
Oh,
written that.
the mother that was complaining about having to go take care of her kid and interrupt her game.
Oh, right.
Society piece.
Okay.
It's
Sorry.
a society piece.
Sorry, it wasn't clicking for some reason. So this came out over the last day or so. A lot of people who play video games may have heard about this in the entertainment circles, but really simple. There's this game. It's a video game called Elden Ring. Doesn't matter. If you play it, you know what it is. If you don't play video games, you don't. Doesn't matter. All you have to think of, you can call it Mario Brothers for all it matters. It's a video game that doesn't have a pause option. So when you play the video game, you can't stop the game. It'll keep going. So you may get killed if you put down your controller, walk away. You know, some monster running around the countryside will just kill your character. Okay? No big deal. Not a big deal. Just nature of the game. This woman, a reviewer, she plays the games. She does gaming reviews. And she's somewhere in her mid-30s. She gets on and she's pissed off. And she's mad that this game, Elden Ring, and games like it don't have a pause function. Because if she has to decide, if she has a 2-year-old child, and she's upset because she can't pause Elden Ring so she can go take care of her 2-year child. And because she can't pause the game so she can take care of her child, she is disabled. She believes she is functionally disabled. It is a disability. She wants it to be a legal disability that you now have to pass laws. You have to change video games. You have to change businesses. You have to change the world because she can't hit the pause button because her 2-year-old child needs to have his diaper changed, or he's crawling around and about to put his finger inside an electric socket because the parent is too busy playing a video game than paying attention to the baby. This is sickening to me. I found this to be absolutely sickening that this woman is, first of all, if you have a 2-year-old, that 2-year-old takes priority over any video game. That should be basic human nature. Every human being on the face of the earth should understand that, except sociopaths. And, well, make your own decision about that. The second thing is she wants a game to, okay, it doesn't have a pause. You knew that. It's a video game. Toss it to the side. It will restart at some point. Take care of your baby. Your baby is the priority. Why are you playing a video game when you got a baby running around?
Don't respawn.
It
Yeah.
just pisses me off.
It's a prime example of the type of entitlement that we've bred into our society. It really is. It's an entitlement. It's like you don't, as an adult, you have to have your priorities straight. And then when you get to sit down for a little bit, maybe you get an hour or two in, maybe more, maybe less. But if your priorities are not done, then you shouldn't immediately be able to gratify yourself with entertainment. And that whole point of delayed gratification is just gone for us now. And it gets worse and worse with the shorter and shorter media that we consume.
Well, the gratification.
Think about it.
Go ahead.
Like TikTok, right? So you're talking like TikTok, YouTube Shorts, Instagram, like these simple 10, 30-second, 60-second clips that you're gonna watch. People spend hours scrolling through stuff, right? And you wind up waking up out of watching some of these things, and you're like, oh man, I just lost an hour and a half. Where did it go? Well, I mean, you were engrossed in this, but it's designed that way. Like it helps the whole psychology of it is dopamine hit. You go through, you're gratified instantly. You get like a 60-second clip, and then you can move on.
Yeah.
And it's very prevalent in the video game area. Like
Yeah,
I even look at it with my own children.
Yeah,
And
but
it's
they
like,
call this a new thing. This is a new thing. It's called situational disabilities. So disabilities now have, it's no longer, I don't have, I can't see, or I can't walk, or I can't lift things. No, no, no. It's situational. It's, I have a kid. Having a child, according to this 30-something-year-old progressive idiot, having children is a disability. The child, the existence
it eats into
of
my
her
it eats into
2-year-old.
my
Can you
Well,
imagine
and
that?
here's the other thing. Okay.
it's very
And
autistic.
pretty soon it will twist, because if it's classified as a disability, that people that are quote unquote addicted to these games are going to be able to collect disability and SSI because they are unable to work because the game doesn't allow for a pause.
Yeah.
They must be on the game as much time as possible in order to achieve their goals and so forth.
It's evil. This is just evil.
It's just another degradation of society to keep us complacent, so that when we actually are faced with something we have to prioritize, we will choose complacency over prioritizing whatever, going out to vote, learning about our rights, fighting for our rights. It's going to be too much of a hassle. I'd rather sit down and be able to play games. And I like video games. I love playing video games. They were my hobby after reading. But I'm also an adult. I have stuff I have to do. You know, I got to go to work every day.
Right.
Having children is not a disability.
No,
It's
it's
not
not.
even a requirement. And no, your video game is not a higher priority than the child, whether or not it has a pause button. We're talking about the next generation of evil. This is evil.
Yeah.
I blame communists. No, really, think about it, because the one thing that they want to try and do is they want to separate the family so that you rely completely on the state, right? Well, what better way to do that than to classify your children as disabilities? So when you have them, who do you give them to? The state.
Right.
It's communism.
Okay, well, I guess we covered it, so I'm not going to put it on next week. I know we're over, but I really liked that Frank brought up that we do a moron of the week. So, Doll, while the guys are covering theirs, and I don't know if you have what I put up that for mine that you can do. It's self-explanatory. Doll, maybe you can look up your moron for the week.
Moron for the week. Oh. You want me to do a version of the Darwin Awards? Because I got a good one. There was a I was scrolling through social media, and I happened to catch a site of one of our brand new gun systems that we just sent over to the Ukraine. They must have hand loaded some of the rounds, because they packed that thing in there, and the next thing you know, the whole turret disappears. They Darwined themselves right out of existence. That's our tax dollars going up in smoke. Gone. Jeez. No, I don't know. I'd have to take a look and see what's going on lately. I mean, the craziest thing I saw is, you know what? I do want to say something. I do want to say one thing. If you are a person that crawls social media, be very careful about what you share around social media. I mean, and I say that because tonight, just before the Liberty Foundation's roundtable started, there was reporting that there was a medical emergency on Air Force One with Biden. And then there was, no, he landed and he got out of the plane and he's okay. And then there's he didn't show up at his house with the rest of the caravan. So nobody knows where the president is. Secret Service probably knows, but no one's saying anything. Press doesn't see him. Now speculation is flying. If you're going to put something out because you hear something, it's best just to wait and verify. Like, if you're going to put it out there, just say, hey, this is unverified. And if you want to speculate about it, speculate, but it's completely conjecture. There's no evidence backing up anything. Like, I just saw this, and
I would
people
totally
were going back and forth all night.
I would totally concur with that, because I know I put a meme out this week on a resolution, and Michael actually, I said, here's something I saw. I'm going to have to look into it. And then Michael came back and put down that, yes, this is true, and blah, 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 blah. So later on, I did an update, and I said, okay, this is true. But if you go down and look at the comment that the co-founder of Liberty First Foundation wrote, you can see the determination on this.
Right.
Well, let me mention that, and just so people can see, let me show you what I'm looking at here, folks, so you'll get it.
And I did see that report before we came on, and that he got off the plane, but I didn't see anything after that. So thanks for that update, Dal.
So
yeah,
this is coming. So here's the news, and this is the only agency I saw initially in my search for it, really quick, that Joe Biden may have suffered an incident, Air Force One. First problem, Mint, not known to be a credible source. Their source, and where Mint is getting it from, and when I say Mint, I mean this is livemint.com, not the phone supplier, but a different company.
right.
And their source is a Twitter X account, which is Leading Report. Now, I followed Leading Report before. They are also not known as a credible agency. Not that they're wrong all the time, but they're not known for being credible. They change the stories. They change the information. They don't necessarily cover everything properly. So they're the ones who are telling this other less than credible source that this may have happened. And as they continue to go forward, they also mention BNO News Desk. That's another less than credible news source.
We got an ad playing in the background.
Me?
Yeah.
Okay, don't know where it's coming from. Don't know where it's coming from. Is it gone?
Yeah, it's gone.
Okay, it had to be coming from. Well, that's one of the problems. See, I couldn't hear that on my end. Yeah. But that's, again, less than credible sites do things like that. So I'll clear my system.
But it was picked up by Laura Loomer. That's why people started sharing it around. And it even got as far as Dinesh D'Souza. It was Ashley St. Clair that actually went to Dinesh's thread and was like, stop doing this. It's not true.
Yeah.
So,
I see no credible sources with it.
Boss, why don't you go ahead and do your moron of the week?
My what?
Your moron of the week.
Biden. He's a transracial, gender fluid president.
Yeah. Oh man.
What else do I need to say about him? And those are his words describing himself.
Michael?
I'm looking at my moron of the week is Representative Morrell, who is proposing a constitutional amendment to reverse the Trump versus the United States Supreme Court ruling that we were talking about earlier.
The immunity one.
Yes.
Oh my God.
Okay, so basically, don't agree with the Supreme Court. Let's put forth an amendment. Okay, evidently this guy doesn't realize what is needed to actually get an amendment through.
not only that, does he not understand the ramifications of reversing the ruling by making it an amendment in the Constitution?
Yeah.
Oh, I think he does. This is him pandering to his base. He doesn't expect it to ever happen, and he doesn't want it to happen. I guarantee you, if you sat him down and said, "Do you want this to happen to any Democratic president in the future?" That they're going to, every president will go to jail if you remove their immunity. All of them, every single president will be a criminal somewhere in the world. Therefore, they're going to go to jail, including the Democrats. Do you want that? I guarantee you, he'd say no. No, he's doing this because it's about getting votes, which makes him even worse.
That's all it is. Okay, but I don't think he's going to get too much support, because when he is doing a 4th of July parade yesterday, he had to be removed via police car because a pro-Palestinian protest interrupted the parade.
Got assaulted.
Yeah.
He straight up got assaulted by 25 people.
Really?
Yeah. Surrounded him and everything.
Wow.
So that was I already read the story through. 25 of the pro-Hamas, I have words for them. They're pro-Hamas protesters, so to speak. They during a July 4th Independence Day pro-America parade, they ran on up to Representative Morell, a congressman, surrounded him while he's standing there with his wife and children, while there are children in the parade and surrounding the parade, screaming in his face that they want to help Hamas, the terrorist organization that killed 34 Americans, tortured 22 Americans, most of them to death. And he wound up having to ride through the rest of the parade in a police car.
Yeah.
But he wants to get rid of immunity.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, my moron of the week was Harris. Because after the debate, she did a couple interviews, but I think the one I posted wasn't with Anderson. It was with another news station. And she talked about how slow the president got off in his debate, but what a wonderful job he did.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Did you guys happen to see that during the one of the Independence Day parades up in Maine, that the American communists were flying the Chinese communist flag and parading down the street right behind, like the I think it was the VFW. Did you guys see that?
No.
No.
Yeah.
They didn't
So
get
it was-
knocked out for that?
No. That was the funny part. It was like the VFW was leading with the colors. Then they had the marching band, and then there was like another float, and then right behind them was the communists, and they're flying the Chinese national flag, and they're all wearing red, and I'm just like, man, that's so crazy. I mean, freedom of speech, I guess, but it's like, what the hell? You're gonna march an authoritarian, the flag of another nation on our nation's most important day, and the founding is the complete antithesis of what the CCP stands for. That's just
they don't respect America. They don't believe in America, and they don't know, or they choose not to acknowledge people died for their right to be able to do something that insulting.
Yeah, it doesn't matter to them.
So we're Doll, just in case. I think it's great. I think you should come join us more often.
Yeah.
Instead of just being in chat, 5 of us can be on the screen.
Yeah,
sure.
But we're going to start doing the moron of the week every week at the end. So
Okay, I'll make sure I have my moron ready.
Well, plan for next week because remember, folks, I'm going to be in Vegas, so I don't know
That's
if
right.
I'll be able to be on.
Okay, no
You know
worries.
what? Maybe I'll go and search up some stuff about the Vindman brothers. They were newsworthy lately.
Well,
They were
if you can
begging for money.
on next week, boss, I don't know. Dal's going to have to fill in all them pauses and tell us what it's really about and keep Michael in line and, you know, argue with him a little bit.
I don't know how well I'll do, but keeping Michael in line. I think when the two of us get going, it's going to be hard.
Well,
All right,
especially
so why don't you go
considering
ahead and
after the
close us
show,
out,
Dal and I have spent several times till 4:00 in the morning having discussions.
Yeah.
It happens.
So, okay, well, that pretty much wraps up this week's show, everybody. Please join us next week. We're going to be touching on Agenda 47, which is Trump's version of Project 2024. Trump
25.
came out this week and claims he knows nothing about 2020, or claims that he does not support 2024.
2025.
He supports parts of it. He thinks other parts of it are just abysmal, and that he has nothing to do with Project 2024.
He flipped his position, and he did it because the president of the Heritage Foundation said something really stupid that the left is running with. Basically, the left says that Heritage said that they want to have a bloody civil war. That's not what Trump said. That's not what Project 2025 says. That isn't exactly what the Heritage president said, what they're running with it. So that's
basically what the Heritage Foundation president said was, this is a bloodless revolution if the left will allow it.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what he claimed. That's what he said. Okay, that Project 2025 is a bloodless revolution if the left will allow it. Okay, nothing more, nothing less. And in a lot of ways, if you read through Project 2025, it is a revolution of sorts. It is a revolution to restore our country back to its founding principles.
Yeah.
And some aspects of it, I don't necessarily agree with because I don't see them as being constitutional. If you go by the text of the Constitution and you go by the original intent,
It's all about execution. It's about. It's not the ideas are fine. Every administration has ideas. They all have a playbook. It doesn't matter. It's the execution. It's it's how you do what you're thinking you would want. And so Project 2025, like we were talking about last week, people can look it up. Not such a bad idea. Really not that unconstitutional. There's nothing overtly bad about it. But this guy said something that the left could run with, and it's politically disadvantageous, which is why we're saying this. That's the only real reason. I mean,
well, essentially, I think it comes down to it being aggressive, but we can talk about that next week. And that's that the aggressiveness at which the left is meeting resistance is one of the reasons why I believe that the more the authoritarians' power is threatened, the more likely it is that they're going to try and find or manufacture an event where they can try to close the fist, because they're panicking. They're all this work that they've done for the better part of nearly 80 years it looks like it could vanish in a moment, and they can't handle that. They can't allow themselves to slip backwards like that. Not when they're so close they can taste it.
Well. Oh, by the way, just real quick, I wanted to throw this in. The unemployment rate is 4.1%. Media kind of forgot to mention today that Bidenomics increased the unemployment rate again. It's 4.1% now. It went up. Biden failed again. Just throwing that in there. Just wanted to mention it. Never mind.
Oh, if you guys shop at Big Lots, you got a limited time. They're closing all 1,400 stores.
Not surprised.
No, not surprised at all.
So, that's another mark on the bedstand for Biden there. Good job. Build back lousy.
Okay, everybody. So we're going to go ahead and wrap up this week's edition of the Liberty First Foundation Roundtable, weekly roundtable. We're here every Friday night, 9 p.m. Eastern Time. We do encourage you that you like, share, comment, and subscribe. Find out when we're going live. Get the alerts. Turn on the alerts. Okay. Like I said, we're here every Friday night, 9 p.m. Eastern Time. We are going to start working on some other stuff coming in the near future. So stay tuned. And with that, find yourself a constitutionally thinking organization and join, get involved, because we, the people, are the only ones that can change what's going on. We'll see you all next week. Thank you, everybody.